Hi there, welcome to my weekly live stream. Today I wanted to do a Q&A. I had a few questions come in over the week, and so I thought I would share. And if you happen to get on the live stream while I'm here, I'm usually on for 10 or 15 minutes. If you happen to get on while I'm here, feel free to leave a question. So a couple of things came up this week. One of them was this question of being a yoga teacher and feeling full of self-doubt, and what do you do about it? And what a great question, and what a common experience too. I remember when I first started teaching, there weren't as many yoga teachers then, of course, but also like we didn't have this kind of discussion. We weren't having these kinds of frank discussions about challenges that come up for teachers, particularly these kinds of feelings of feeling inadequate or feeling like you don't know what you're doing, or feeling like you're a failure or a fraud. Those kinds of feelings I think are really common. Part of it is because, well, the profession is largely dominated by women, and we've been acculturated to feel to have senses of self-doubt, just from the gate, because of gender issues and sexism, of course. But I think other parts of it have to do with the feeling unprepared, not like your training hasn't prepared you for what's out there. And that's really a common challenge. The people don't feel prepared for what's out there. They don't feel like they've had enough training. 200 hours. I always tell my students, like, 200 hours of training. Can't cut somebody's hair or clean their teeth with 200 hours of training, but we somehow think that's enough training for a yoga teacher. So clearly it's not enough training. People need more yoga training to be able to get out there, but that doesn't mean that we should have a sense that we don't know anything. With 200 hours of training, you have a sufficient amount of training to be able to guide somebody through a safe practice, particularly if you're teaching slow, mindful practices. You do have enough training for that. So the issue comes up with self-doubt of, why do we experience it? Why are we facing so much self-doubt, and why is it so common? And how do you overcome it, of course, when you're standing up in front of people, because performance anxiety is real. When I first started doing live streams, and even now when I do my live streams every week, I'm like, yeah, I got to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And and people are looking at you and making judgments based on your appearance, and all of that stuff, it inevitably goes through our mind. So what has helped me throughout the years in the challenge of having to get up and do public speaking and talk in front of groups of people is a practice that's called Madhu Vidya, that I learned from my teachers. And Madhu Vidya means the sweet knowledge. And that sweet knowledge is that there's always a guiding support. You could also think about the practice from the niyamas called Ishvara Pranidhana, which means something like, I accept the support of my higher power. I'm connected to my higher power, and so I accept that support. And so taking a moment to stop and pause and remember that interconnectedness, and that what you're doing is a sense of service for others. That sort of practice before starting has been very helpful for me. There's so many other things, that we can do. There's so many other practices, but that practice specifically is such a simple, elegant, simple, and powerful practice that helps take the burden off of me, so I don't feel like it's just my ego. But I feel like what I'm doing is I'm being a vehicle for an energy to move through me. So I hope that's helpful. And there's been a lot of conversation with many, many comments about this on the Subtle Yoga Facebook page. So if you want to read those comments, so many great comments and so many great suggestions, please sign up for the Subtle Yoga community page, which is, it's just called Subtle Yoga Community. I'm sorry, it's a group, not a page. Subtle Yoga Community on Facebook, and you're welcome to join. So I hope that's helpful. Let's see. Tracy wrote and said 200 hours was the tip of the iceberg. I continued to take classes to educate myself and learn. I struggled to speak publicly, though. Eek. Yeah. Public speaking. They say people there's two things that people are afraid of: death and public speaking. And actually, public speaking, people are more afraid of that than they are of dying. So public speaking is, I want to give you one more tip about public speaking that I think may be helpful, Tracy. When I was studying with my shiatsu masters, the bodywork teachers that I studied with many years ago. One of my teachers was a traditional Chinese medicine teacher, and he was just had such a great way of teaching. You know, he was very conversational, and he told great stories. And so, you know, one time I remember saying to him, "Isn't it scary teaching when you're up there and teaching in front of everybody?" And he said, "No, the way that I get over that is I just kind of think, well, what would I be doing if I was sitting in my living room and talking to people about this stuff? And then when I kind of have that idea and then I go into teaching, then it's much easier." So that, for some reason, that always stuck with me and has been very helpful. And I feel like sometimes, especially a couple of decades ago when yoga started becoming a thing, that yoga teaching, like you couldn't make a mistake and you had to say every right word, and, you know, you had to have this facade of being very serious. And I'm so happy that that is over. You know, I'm so happy that, well, I shouldn't say it's over, but it's over for me. But I think that we've evolved as a yoga community. And I think we're at a place where people can share their stories. We can be much more conversant in yoga classes, much more casual. And it doesn't have to be sort of this, you know, very scripted thing. So when you get beyond that kind of scripted idea, I think that's when it becomes much easier. So I hope that's helpful, Tracy, and anybody else who's listening. Okay, so let's see. There was another question that came in, and this was about progesterone. And believe it or not, that's a progesterone question. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm not a doctor, but I can talk a little bit about it from the, you know, of course I studied a lot about neuroscience, so I can talk a little bit about it. So the question was about sleep and how sleep often, particularly for women, as we enter the perimenopausal and menopausal years, starts to become elusive, and if progesterone can be helpful. So the answer is, for some people, yes, it can be helpful because progesterone does help to mediate cortisol in the system. However, it is a precursor to cortisol as well. This stuff is so complicated, you know. So for some people take oral progesterone and then they convert it into cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So you do not want that happening in your system. So consult a physician on that one, I would say. But it can't. But for some people, progesterone as a bioidentical hormone seems to be helpful for sleep. And then in terms of what is helpful for sleep with yoga, one of my go-tos. I've had insomnia since I was a small child, actually. So I'm quite well aware of it. And some of my most wonderful ideas come to me in the middle of the night, but it's not great for my ojas. You know, it's not great for my my system in general. So I really am very careful about my sleep hygiene and try and do. And, you know, I don't always get good sleep. Last night I didn't get good sleep, but I'm much, you know, I can be pretty good about it. So what yoga really helps with sleep for me is inversions. And I think I feel like I wrote something on that very recently, but anyway, if you can't find that in my blogs, I think actually I was writing about it last week, but anyway, legs up the block, legs up the wall, shoulder stand, half shoulder stand, even downward facing dog, and some forward bends, like seated forward bends, restorative forward bends, child's pose as a restorative posture. And, you know, many of those are really, well, child's pose isn't an inversion, but many of those postures can be very helpful because forward bends tend to lend themselves to a relaxing effect on the nervous system. Some of that, as I understand it, I was listening to Sarah McLaughlin, who's a physician at Yogaville, and she was talking about how, and I think it makes sense, we, from the occiput, particularly from where the occiput and C1 meet, and then at the sacrum, that's where there's a lot of innervation of parasympathetic nerves. And so when those areas particularly are receiving more stimulation through forward bending postures, that it seems to be helpful for kicking in the relaxation response. it's, you know, I think there's some validity to that. I think we'll have, you know, as science becomes more subtle, we're going to have more and more explanations, better explanations and understandings for sort of some of the ways that these postures work. But I always say, like, you know, if legs up the block or legs up the wall, if I could put that in a bottle, you know, that would be a great selling sleep treatment or just relaxation treatment in general. So I like to spend like 15 or 20 minutes every day in some kind of an inversion. It's been really helpful for me. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap unless anybody has any more questions. Thank you for being here, all of you that were here. And I'll be back again next week, same time, about 12 noon on Thursdays. Well, 12 noon Eastern, wherever you are. And let's see, one other thing. I'm working on an online course right now. It's a 40-hour course called the Subtle Yoga Revolution Teacher Training. I'm so excited about it. And it's almost ready. So I'm hoping we're going to release it on February 27th. So keep an eye out. If you're not getting my emails, feel free to, you know, you could leave your email in a comment or message it to me. I'm happy to share emails with you. And I'll let you know more about it. Oh, I sent out a video today on the list too. It's about the lost art of flopping around. So I'll let you have a look at that one. Okay, thanks for being here. Namaste. I'll see you next week.